tall somebody is. It could be many meters or several meters rather. And that mitochondria do a lot of stuff besides just produce energy. Because I think people hear mitochondria energy and they think, oh, so these patients felt better, they lost weight, they have more energy, and then they're doing better. But here we're talking about remission of auditory hallucinations, people feeling suicidal and then changing their diet and feeling like life is something they can deal with and maybe even function extremely well, and et cetera. So maybe we could just talk about mitochondria for a moment and then talk about these two major effects. What are some of the other things that mitochondria are important for in neurons and maybe other cells of the brain? Because as an access point for all this, I think it would be great if people could learn a little mitochondrial biology.
Yeah, no, so I guess the first thing that I'll say is that, this field is one of the most cutting edge fields in medicine right now. 20 years ago or so, I think the majority of research scientists thought of mitochondria as nothing more than little batteries. They take food and oxygen and turn it into ATP, and that's really important. Yeah, we get that, but they're just little batteries. That's all they are. And so one of the reasons that this work is so important is because it combines cutting edge research in the metabolic field and the aging field, and we can start to pair it with the mental health and neurological health field. So mitochondria, one scientist gave me this analogy. He said, if you think of the cell as a computer, a lot of people think of mitochondria as the power cord to that computer because they're providing the power. And they are, in fact, the power cord to that computer. But actually, their real function is the motherboard of that computer. So mitochondria are directing and allocating resources throughout a cell. That is their primary function. And then they happen to be powerhouses as well. And so to give some clear examples, mitochondria play a direct role in the production and release and regulation of some really key neurotransmitters, including serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, acetylcholine. Those are pretty powerful neurotransmitters.
Yeah, I would consider those I know you listed more than three, but the sort of primary colors of neurotransmission.
Yes.
Any one of those in excess or deficiency is going to have profound negative effects on a nervous system, or it's going to alter the way that people and animals feel, think, move, remember, et cetera. Yeah.
And so mitochondria are providing both some of the building blocks, if you will, for some of those molecules. They're part of the Krebs citric acid cycle. Some of the intermediate products actually go into making those neurotransmitters. Much more importantly, mitochondria provide the energy for the production of those neurotransmitters. And fascinatingly, mitochondria are directly related to the release of neurotransmitters. ATP alone is not enough. There have been some research studies that have actually found that mitochondria move along the membrane of the synapse to release batches of vesicles of neurotransmitters. And that if the mitochondria are removed from the synapse and researchers flood that cell with ATP, neurotransmitters usually are not getting released. Mitochondria are doing other things. We don't entirely even understand what all they're doing or how they're doing it, but they're doing other things than just providing the power. Another really important example is that mitochondria are actually the primary regulators of epigenetics. If you look at any one factor, so one study actually found that they're responsible for the expression of about 60% of the genes in a cell. And mitochondria do this through a lot of ways that have been known for years and sometimes decades. So mitochondria are directly related to the levels of reactive oxygen species in a cell. They are managing calcium regulation in cells. And we know that those things play a role in epigenetic expression. We know the levels of ATP to ADP or AMP also play a role. And mitochondria are doing those things. But it turns out mitochondria are actually doing much more sophisticated things than even those in terms of gene expression. Mitochondria at least play a role in all of the aspects of the human stress response. So when humans are stressed, either physically or psychologically, there are several things that happen. Increased cortisol, increased adrenaline, noradrenaline, inflammation, and gene expression, in particular in the hippocampus, occur with the stress response. And one group of researchers actually genetically modified mitochondria in 4 different ways and found that all of the stress response, all those 4 buckets of stress response were impacted in one way or another, implying that mitochondria are somehow playing a role in those. In terms of their role in cortisol, we know that mitochondria actually have the enzyme required for the synthesis of steroid hormones. So that includes cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone, some names that maybe everybody's heard of. And so that means that if mitochondria are in short supply or dysfunctional, the production of those hormones may become dysregulated. Mitochondria play a direct role in inflammation, and they turn the inflammatory system both on, or they at least play a role in turning the inflammatory system both on and off. I think I'm not going to be able to quote the exact study and author, but one paper in Cell actually identified mitochondria as the key regulator in turning certain inflammatory cells off. And that when you inhibit mitochondrial function, those cells don't turn off. That mitochondrial levels of reactive oxygen species are a key signaling process to turn the inflammatory cell process off. Another study found that macrophages are an important immune cell that play a role in healing. So if you cut yourself, your body will get, send inflammation that way, and send immune cells that way to try to heal your skin. And macrophages play an important role in that healing. One group of researchers tried to figure out, how do macrophages know to switch between the different phases of wound healing? Because the macrophages do different things in the different phases of wound healing. And the conclusion of all of their research was that it's mitochondria. Mitochondria are sending the essential signals that change the state of the macrophages to induce these different phases of wound healing. So I've just talked about neurotransmitters, hormones, epigenetic expression, inflammation. For anybody familiar with the mental health field, they know these are like some of the key variables that researchers have been struggling with for decades, trying to figure out, how do these fit together? We know that all of those buckets can be disrupted in people with mental disorders. And our field has struggled to understand, but how do they fit together? How can we make sense of this disruption? And I believe once you understand the science of mitochondria, you can actually connect all of the dots of the mental illness puzzle.